Hello and welcome to Wildly Unplug, the podcast where we unplug, get outside, and see what develops. I'm your guide, Lauren. This segment is Wildly Rejected, aka Becoming the Bison. This is going to be weeks 16, 17, 18, and 19. I know it's been a minute since I've been on here, and we're trying out Riverside Studio, so this is why we have video today. If you're watching this on YouTube, and we're gonna play around. We're gonna do, present over perfect. I am going to be reading from my blog, kind of ad-libbing the last, month of updates that we have. So if you're new here, the idea behind the challenge is simple. Instead of running away from rejection, I'm heading straight into the storm like a bison does. The goal is 1,000 rejections, inspired by Gabby Carr's challenge, because somewhere hidden inside all the no's are yeses, unexpected opportunities, and lessons I would have never found otherwise. I'm gonna be sad. The picture from week 16 and 17 on Substack has George, and we had to say goodbye to him. Whew, I'm gonna try and get through this without crying, guys. This is the ooey-gooey part of becoming a butterfly. In the last blog that I did in podcast, I confidently said, even with a move, I will be able to keep up with weekly updates, and I have failed at that. I have failed hard, and you know what? That is okay, and we need to teach everybody it's okay to take a break. We're not here for a hustle culture. And, I'm nowhere near my weekly goal, and that's okay to slow down. Life has been a whirlwind. I think I need to give myself permission to live through this transition instead of immediately turning it into another productivity challenge. When I was moving about a month ago now, I drove by the exact spot that a decade ago I was sitting in traffic on I-71 South, looking at the Cincinnati skyline in front of me as I drove to work. And I remember thinking that I had everything I had ever wanted. A great husband, amazing son, the career of my dreams, a cute little house, and this baby blue Jeep Wrangler. And I was completely happy in that moment, and I did something that I never used to do. Certainly never used to do enough back then, and that was thank God. And over the years that have followed, it felt like God shook everything up and said, there is more in store for you. Do not settle where you're at. And the journey has not been without heartbreak. There are times that I couldn't understand why things were happening and changing it the way they were. And even now, I don't feel like I've emerged the butterfly yet. I feel like I'm still in the ooey-gooey gross part of the cocoon or chrysalis, where the caterpillar no longer exists, but the butterfly is not fully formed yet either. And that's where I am right now. So about a month ago, when I sat in traffic at that exact same spot, looking at the exact same city skyline, with my life looking remarkably different, I am moving to a city that I absolutely love and adore and have so much fun in, and never could have imagined that I would call it home. I'm no longer driving that baby blue Wrangler, but I'm starting my next chapter in another blue vehicle, but this time a Bronco. And as I drove away from that city skyline, I was bawling my eyes out and sad and scared. And I talk to God a lot more frequently these days and thank him for everything, and even in the uncertain times, because it's all for a reason. And I felt like I should have been so much happier this time than I was the second time. But here's the thing. Comfort zones are sometimes too comfortable. And even when we know it's time to leave them, stepping outside them can be incredibly painful. So I felt every ounce of pain leaving Cincinnati. And it still doesn't feel completely real. I'm still in the transition stage, traveling back and forth between Key West and Fort Myers until my son leaves for college. This was 2 weeks ago. My son's now in college. I'm now an empty nester. So a few weeks ago, when I was leaving Key West to go to Fort Myers, it hit me that I wasn't heading back to Ohio. I wasn't even traveling halfway back up the state of Florida. Ohio was no longer waiting for me at the end of that journey. For the first time in nearly 40 years, I live in a completely different state, and nearly at the same time, I'm an empty nester and just trying to figure out who I am without the routines and responsibilities and relationships and familiar places that once shaped that part of my life. So yes, I have fallen behind on my rejection goal, but I am still putting myself out there. And maybe it's not the season for racing towards the next 100 submissions. Maybe it's just the season for learning who I am right now. The entire summer schedule revolved around Connor's college orientation, and I believed I was going to be going. I'm still crying about Georgie. I'm not crying about Connor. That'll probably come later on in this podcast. But I believed I was going to. I've got my little chihuahua here keeping me company. I believed I was going to be going to Connor's orientation and, not following him around or hovering over him and, being that kind of parent, but attending the portion that was designed for parents. And Connor didn't want me there. So by the time he reconsidered and tried to add me, it was already too late. And I knew that if I called and pushed hard enough, I could have been added. I would have found a way to make it happen. But I decided I'm no longer forcing myself into places where I'm not wanted. And maybe it's something that he wanted to do for himself. So for me, the orientation represented this neat little closing of a major chapter in my life. And, I stayed behind for 1.5 years so he can finish school, and delaying my full transition into Key West and putting off the chance to build my life and routines. And it feels like I was missing a major thing of what I envisioned closing that chapter looked like. So instead of staying home and sulking and doom scrolling, I decided to take my own advice, and I went outside and I saw what developed. See what I did there? So I drove about an hour to Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge, and my family has been visiting there on vacations for nearly 20 years. So it feels strange to realize that I can now just visit it whenever. So I packed my 600mm lens, brought a large coffee with me, and headed out early to search some wildlife. And I saw plenty of cat scat, although no cats made an appearance. I did get to see manatees mating for about 30 minutes, and I feel weird now admitting that out loud. It was like National Geographic. I photographed a heron catching a catfish, and I even saw a black skimmer doing what the name suggests. It was skimming across the surface of the water. And capturing a skimmer in action has been on my photography bucket list for a long time, and I finally got to check that off of the list. So I was happy I put myself out there and did something to make me happy. Afterwards, I got to go to the Bubble Room for lunch, and it's one of the most unusual and fun restaurants around. And then I got to head to Blind Pass to look for shells. I didn't find anything spectacular, but not that that really matters. Simply walking around on the shore and grounding my feet into the sand really just felt rejuvenating. At one point, I stepped into a part of the beach that was eroding away, and suddenly my foot sank into the ground like quicksand, like you see in the TV shows in the 80s that they tried to prepare us for, and it never happened. But my first thought was, holy, this is what quicksand in the movies feels like. And then my second thought was that this is exactly what my life feels like right now. Like the ground beneath me is no longer there. I can't return to Cincinnati and step back into my old life, but also I've not fully built a new life yet. I'm just standing around somewhere in between trying to find solid ground, while parts of me keep sinking into the unfamiliar. Still, I do not stay stuck. I pulled my foot out and kept walking, and I think that's the big lesson of the past 4 weeks, is to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So I did not complete, well, the 40 tasks, and I did not keep up with the blog, but I did move across the country, and letting go of one of the most significant roles in my life, missed a moment that I thought was going to be bringing me closure. But I did have a couple rejections come in. One of them was from NASA Social for the Roman telescope launch. And that one I thought was going to be really cool because I lived pretty close. It would have been not very difficult for me to go to that one. And I thought it would have been really cool, like, you know, walking around with a media badge and a backstage pass, getting to meet other creators and watching the rocket launch from a perspective that very few people get to see. But I wasn't selected. Hopefully there'll be other opportunities. So no worries. Another one of my rejections was my psychological thriller short story, Out of Season, was rejected. And they didn't just send a formal letter, they actually gave me feedback, which is honestly a gift to anybody getting any sort of rejection. They wrote, "The team has decided not to include your piece Out of Season in this issue. While they loved the gradual peeling back of the narrative, they felt that the characters lacked depth." At first it was hard to read that because Out of Season is a deeply personal story for me. To me, those characters have incredible depth because I know them well. And I also wanted to leave room for the reader, if they were going through a similar situation, to be able to put themselves in the shoes of the main character. So that's why I didn't put too much backstory, or I didn't even have names to these characters, because I did want it to be like you could put yourself in those shoes. So after that initial sting wore off, I did realize something that is the kind of rejection that I can work with. An editor is actually taking time to point me towards a better draft. Not everything everybody creates is going to be gold. It needs to be forged in the fire, and constructive feedback during rejection is the best kind of fire. So I am very, very thankful that they took the time to send some details with that rejection. So I'm not going to go over the numbers for weeks 16 and 17 and one of my submissions, because I do have an update. I will go ahead and pull that one up now. So switching over again, I do try and update on Substack pretty frequently. So for weeks 18 and 19, I have pictures of my Georgie. If I'm able to play around on Riverside, I'll put up some pictures here too. He is such a good boy. So this one starts with, "We had to say goodbye to our best good boy, Georgie. He is such a shining light that his absence has really been noticed, and it's really hard to move on without him. And on top of that, dropping my son off at school, I am officially an empty nester, and now I am living full-time in Key West." So to say that it's been a lot of transition all at once is an understatement. And I realize that in this season of change, the rejections have stung a little bit more. On top of losing parts of my life, I'm also losing parts of my future that I had envisioned. And I guess that's what happens when we build up expectations. There's also the wondering of, what is my life now and what is my purpose? However, the challenge is encouraging me to take the next steps forward in figuring that out. So since July 30th, I have had 13 new asks, which I didn't talk about in the past about 15 minutes or so. And I have received 2 new rejections in weeks 18 and 19. It's hard to keep all this straight, guys. I'm telling you what. So this stretch of the challenge is starting to feel different, and it's not just simply putting any of my artwork out to any old place, or my artwork and my talent. It's also trying to figure out where I belong now. On July 30th, I submitted a poster design for the 2026 Fantasy Fest poster contest. And for people that are not from the Key West area, Fantasy Fest is a huge celebration that takes place over a week It might even be 2 weeks. Definitely over a week. And oh, my eyes are burning. Anyway, it's definitely over a week, and there's all sorts of craziness that happens, but there are some family-friendly parts too. There's parades, there's dance competitions, there's, oh gosh, who's the lady that wore a muumuu in Three's Company? Mrs. Roper? There's a Mrs. Roper party, and everybody dresses up like Mrs. Roper. I mean, like, it's just, you never know what you're gonna see around any street corner, like somebody dressed up their truck to look like a giant pirate ship. It's just, it's part of what makes Key West so unique and special. So I did put a lot of thought and work into creating, my eyes burn. Okay. I did put a lot of thought and work into creating that piece. I made a Key West rooster surrounded by all these different references to musical icons and iconic musicals. That's the theme for this year. So musical icons, there's a ton of those. And then iconic musical, again, tons of those. So I feel like, I know that my poster was very crowded. That's what I should have done. I should have showed, I'll update my Substack, and I'll also try and put that up here, a picture of my poster design. It got crowded. There's a bunch of different references to different, well, musical icons and iconic musicals. I did it on digital media, and it's fun. It's also frustrating, and it fully took up a lot of my time, about 50 hours of my time. And thankfully it was during a time where I was busy moving, and I just had my tablet, and I can just, you know, at night work on that. So it wasn't like I was wasting my time. It was giving me something to kind of work towards. So I was thankful for that. And unfortunately I found out on August 10th that my poster was not selected, and that one stung, because it wasn't just another competition. It was something local and an opportunity to contribute to the creative culture of the place that I'm now calling home. But apparently I was not finished with Fantasy Fest yet. Shortly after that they announced they picked the winner for the poster, they announced that they were accepting theme ideas for 2027. And I submitted an idea. I'm not going to give the name yet, but the idea of it celebrates the people, stories, ghosts, pirates, musicians, treasure hunters, and wonderfully strange characters who have helped shape Key West. So the poster might have received a no, but the theme is still in review. I also sent out an introductory email to an art consultant who posted that she was looking for new and emerging artists. I don't really like doing cold outreach. It's not my favorite thing, but you know, I'd rather kind of paint something online, post it, and hope magically it reaches the right eyeballs. And unfortunately, that's not how opportunities have worked for me, at least not yet. So I sent the email, and I haven't heard anything back yet. I also reached out to Father Nature about potentially appearing on the podcast. No response yet, but the ask still counts. And another important ask was much more personal. I have a friend who's a writer, and I asked her if she could read 2 of my stories out of season, because like I talked about a little bit earlier, it was rejected but got some good feedback, so I wanted to see if she saw the same thing that they did. And also my story, The Cost of Being Seen, because that would be something that I would read at the Writers Guild if I finally read it. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't too weird, because it does lean a little bit in the fantasy, psychological horror angle. So she said yes. I was very excited about that, so we'll see how she likes it. And it might not be a publication acceptance, but allowing someone to read your work that means something to me is a different form of vulnerability. And sometimes it's a scarier ask than asking a stranger. It's letting someone see you as you are. So several of my newest asks combine things that I care about the most: wildlife, conservation, art, and storytelling. I applied to become a Live Wildly Adventurist, which is an opportunity to help encourage people to experience and protect wild Florida, which, hello, that would be perfect. And that application just feels totally aligned with all of my work that I've been doing, you know, through my artwork, photography, podcasts, and the book Wildly Unplugged. And I believe one of the best ways that people can help care about nature is to show them how to begin, starting small, giving them different ways to participate and helping them to discover the species or landscapes that make them curious. I also applied to be a vendor at Sharkapalooza next year, which could be really exciting. And if I get in, it would be an incredible opportunity to network. I entered 2 pieces of my artwork to Save the Manatee art competition and reached out to a company about a possible PR opportunity. And then perhaps probably the most meaningful part of this entire update is that I started making asks that have nothing to do with awards, publications, or selling anything. I applied to join the Florida Keys Watercolor Society, reached out about volunteering at the SOS Foundation Food Pantry, contacted Nancy Forrester's Secret Garden about volunteering with her parrots, and while they all kind of seem like they're not related, they are connected because it's going to help me be a part of this amazing community down here. So for a long time, this challenge has just been teaching myself to get over the fear of hearing no, but now it's also helping me to say, I'm here, I want to help, and I want to be included. Is there room for me here? So that feels pretty vulnerable. On August 18th, I did finally receive a decision from the Pollock-Krasner Foundation grant. I submitted that back in March. It was one of the very first submissions I did, and it was a no. I find that the longer you go without hearing anything, the more likely you are to hear no. Apparently, the application process is so competitive that they can't even give feedback, and rejected applicants don't qualify to reapply for another 24 months. So 5 months was a long time to carry out a little pocket of hope where somewhere in the back of your mind you imagined it could possibly be a yes. And when that email arrives, the possibility just disappears that we regret to inform you. For a moment, my work sat in the same application pool as artists willing to take themselves seriously enough to ask for that kind of support. So that's still a pretty cool thing to be a part of. So this part of my chapter is about putting down new roots. And I don't know which of these opportunities will be yes, and which ones will feel like home, but at least I am taking those small steps forward. So the 1000 rejection challenge stats so far: total asks 167, accepted 39, rejected 77, in review 31, emailed and waiting for a response 16, waitlisted 2, and other 2. So I've completed about 16.7% of my 1000 ask goal. Still a long way to go, and my acceptance rate is about 33.6%. About 1 yes for every 3 decisions. So that's where we're at. Until next time, unplug, get outside, and see what develops. Disclaimer: everything discussed on this blog and podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Whether you are trying a new art technique, exploring the outdoors, or taking your own rejection challenge, please use common sense, follow acceptable laws, safety guidelines, and take responsibility for your own decisions. Stay safe and stay wild.